Today I'm discussing non-renewable energy sources, so I'm going to expect you to know the pros and cons of each of these energy sources that we go through. And you can see a quote from Maurice Strong: "Typical citizens of advanced industrialized nations each consume as much energy in 6 months as typical citizens in less developed countries consume during their entire lives." So this idea of energy is extremely important, having sources of energy for our future generations. And if you like this stuff, then you are a great candidate to take AP Environmental Science in the future. The first energy source we'll discuss is crude oil or petroleum. It's a thick liquid consisting of hydrocarbons, so hydrogen and carbon, sulfur, oxygen, and nitrogen impurities. So how do you actually make oil? You make it from decomposition of dead plants and animals through millions of years of high pressure and high temperature conditions. So it is a it's technically renewable in the sense that it will make more eventually, but it's not renewable because we don't have millions of years to actually wait for oil to be made. What are some of the advantages of crude oil? Well, it's the raw material for many of our plastics, for medicines, organic chemicals, so it's used for a lot of different things. It's also fairly easy to transport in a pipeline. It's not too dangerous, it's not too explosive, and it's quite cheap to actually move from place to place. What are the disadvantages of crude oil? One, we don't have a lot of it. So personally, it is a very big disadvantage that we don't have a lot of crude oil. OPEC, which is the oil producing countries of the world, have about 60%, 67% of the world's crude oil reserves. Saudi Arabia has the most. We have other ways that we create oil, which I'm not going to go through, known as shale oil, but it takes a lot more energy and a lot more money to actually produce that source of oil. Another disadvantage, it's not renewable, so therefore once we use it up, it's gone forever. And when we burn it, it releases CO2, so that's going to contribute to climate change. It releases sulfur dioxides, which are going to cause smog. Think about China and their terrible pollution. They have to wear masks in Beijing because of all the amount of smog. And then you have nitrogen dioxides and trioxides, which cause photochemical smog, which is the smog that's in LA, which maybe in class I'll show pictures of, where people think it's actually fog. No, in the morning that's just the smog layer that's covering the city. And you also have some particulate matter, which is just some dust that's not good to breathe in, and carbon monoxide. Here's an example of the issues with oil. There was an oil spill in Brazil, completely covered this bird, and this bird's probably going to die because it can't get the oil off, it can't swim, it can't fly, probably has difficult breathing. So we saw the big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, how there's still issues with that, and how it's affecting the coastal ecosystems and even the coastal areas' economies when all the shellfish got destroyed and damaged. The second fuel I want to go over is coal. So coal is a solid fossil fuel that's formed in stages as buried remains of plants are subjected to heat and pressure. So it's a similar process to making oil. Usually coal is formed in bogs that are there over time being compressed and getting heated. Coal contains small amounts of sulfur, which is not good, mercury, and radioactive materials, so it is quite dirty. We can see for the actual amount of coal, we are number one. So we do have the most coal on the entire planet, which is not so great because coal is probably the dirtiest source of energy out there. So the one thing we have lots of is probably the worst environmental source of energy on the planet. What are the advantages of coal? It's the most abundant fossil fuel, so it is really easy to find. We got a ton of it, so we can burn a lot of it, get a lot of energy from it. So there's ample supply. It has a high net energy yield, so there's actually lots of energy in the coal. So by burning a little bit of coal, we release tons of energy to power whatever we need to power. And it's cheap, relatively cheap. The disadvantage of coal is that it's dangerous to mine underground. You have to be careful of the mines collapsing and killing people. If you use surface mining, where it's the idea where you're scraping away the surface to get to the coal, well, you have to remove a ton of dirt, remove a ton of materials to get to the coal underneath, so it does destroy ecosystems because you have to put the dirt someplace, and you can see in the picture you're literally changing the entire area. It's once again not renewable, and it also releases many of the same things that oil releases when we burn. It still releases CO2 because it's a fossil fuel, It releases more sulfur dioxide, so it's industrial smog. Even releases some mercury, some radioactive particles, more particulate matter, more nitrogen oxides. So it is a very, very dirty material to burn. That's why our goal in the United States is to eliminate coal power plants so we don't have as much of environmental impact on the planet. And it's also expensive to transport. It's heavy. So you can't just put in a pipeline. You need trucks to actually move it from place to place. So coal does have many advantages energy-wise. Environmentally, though, it's probably the worst source of energy.